All right, let's get this party started. Let's get the word out and fire it up. But like every week, we will get things started, whether the spouts bring people in or not. We have a lot to talk about. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles, y'all. I am your host, Kalari GXC. It is St. Patrick's Day. If you celebrate that, happy St. Patty's Day to you. For the rest of us, it is just a regular day, and it has been a week of fuckery. And I am going to jump right in with the starting topic of what happened to young Raheem or Rasheem. Let me get his name right, Carter, because it is a tragic event. And I feel like it's not shocking to those of us who have existed in our country as Black to live with the fears of this being somebody we love, somebody we know, or us. And it is troubling, this story. The more you read the story, the more your red flag should go off. The fact that it happened in Mississippi should shouldn't shock people, but it shouldn't have people dismiss it as, oh, it's just Mississippi, because this kind of racism happens everywhere. When I lived in New York, we had a former NYPD detective that lived down the street from us, not that far from us. I would pass by his house every day coming home from school when I just started high school. It was already a tumultuous time for me having to move. We were trying to have our own for some reason with my mom, and didn't bother any of the neighbors. Didn't really talk to anybody. It was too school and too home for me because I really didn't have time for much anything else. But you imagine young 14-year-old 10 who already had my world rocked that summer as it is, having detectives show up at the house, and my brain trying to process why. Did somebody tell on the guy that did what he did to me? No. I come to find out that the neighbor didn't want our kind in his neighborhood. Decided that having Black neighbors was a bit too much for him. This is a guy that loved to play bagpipe music over and over, let his geese run about the neighborhood. It was a troublesome time for me at 14 as it was, but it opened my eyes that prejudice can happen anywhere. So when I think about Rasheem, and welcome to the chat, HV Daughterless, and how he called his mom and said that he's being followed by a few white men, which shouldn't give normally people pause unless you've been through that. And I tell people all the time, even living in New York, there was a thing that you knew. You knew certain white folks that were cool with you, that if they came up about you, you didn't jump because they were your friends. You were cool with them. They might have even been your family. But there were certain white people, even in New York, those skinhead motherfuckers especially, that if a group of them came up behind you, your natural instinct is to fear because they wanted you to feel that. They wanted you to be intimidated by their presence and their hate for your existence. So when Rashid called his mom saying these men were following him, I guarantee you that was his instincts kicking in, that this was not a good situation. These people meant to do him harm. Okay, hold up. Let's get this straight right now. I don't like bots. I'm a sci-fi writer, but that doesn't mean I want to deal with bots. So we're gonna nip that in the bud really, really quick. My mods aren't currently in. Axiom Wolf went to go pick up dinner to do me a bit of a favor. So if you hear a little bit of feedback, give me just a moment here. Boop. There we go. Sorry about that, y'all. The perils of live streaming is every once in a while you get one of those, and don't bother me. I'm not going to bother you. I don't need your services. Building it nice, slow, and steady is how we do our everything. But getting back to the topic, him calling his mom doesn't shock me because we are instinctively built with that fight or flight response, with that knowing something isn't right. And what troubles me isn't just the fact that this young man went missing, as they said, but they found him decapitated, and Mississippi wants to play games at this point. They want to say things like, well, we're not sure that his death was unnatural. I'm pretty sure any death that results with a head separating from its body is unnatural. I know they want to try to have the plausible deniability that animals got to the remains and that could have. No, stop it. The facts remain that Rasheem called his mom, saying that he was being followed by a group of white males. He went missing. They found his body with his head severed from it. You don't need to be a genius to put together what may have happened. You don't need to be some true crime conspirator to connect the dots. The fact that it happened in Mississippi, the fact that it happened to a black male when we are constantly feeling the brunt of people who just want to enact their hate upon our existence. It has to stop. And the only way that we are going to stop things like this is not just to work on ourselves and our attitudes, because I've said it several times. I can't convince somebody who's entrenched to hate not to hate. That is not my purpose. That's not my place in life. I would exhaust myself, and I don't have infinite energy. I think in a perfect world, we would just exist and let other people exist and understand what works for us. Doesn't work for anybody, but we are not in a perfect world. We are in a society structured to give the illusion of power to some, give the illusion of luxury to others, and make everybody else struggle and fight with one another. And I would love for us to open our eyes and see the issues so that we can move past and get beyond and really move into an age of enlightenment. But we can't get there because hate is such a low hanging, tasty fruit. It doesn't require a lot of thought, it doesn't require anything but you to feel like, yeah, I don't understand that person. I don't like that person. They shouldn't be in my space. So I have the right to angrily snuff them out. And it's because of this arrogance and this attitude that we cannot move forward. And I'm not going to act like my people are perfect because technically all humans are my people. And I try to remind people of that constantly. All humans are my people. But when I say my people, I mean people with my skin tone. It has been ingrained in me for the longest time that we are different, even though I don't believe that anymore. The older I get, the more I realize that's the fallacy. But when I say my people, I do mean black people at times. I know that we are not a perfect community, but we try, we strive, we survive. And it is exhausting to both our spirits and our energy to constantly have stories like this, constantly have young men like this added to this national registry of fallen names, to the hashtags, because we have to remember them now instead of celebrating their continued life, and it has to stop. I want Rashid's name to be said aloud. I want you to make sure that you don't forget that his death wasn't some weird occurrence. He was literally lynched. And we have to start, oh, Callie's meowing. We have to start taking stories like this seriously because he's not the first. He's sadly not even going to be the last. But if we want this to stop, we have to start paying attention. And welcome to the chat, Beans. I'm sorry I missed Tuesday. I was dealing with some chronic pain. Like, the fibroids decided that they wanted to 1-2 combo with fatigue, and I did not have the energy. Kiddo was running late anyway with his school stuff, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna take a day. I wrote instead. I've been working on the second book, but I am glad to be here tonight because there was so much that went on, and I had show notes planned for Tuesday anyway because of the fact of what happened with the Oscars. Now, I know, no, those of you who know me know I give absolutely no fucks about award shows at all. Not a fan, just don't bother with them normally. I feel like awards are nice if you need them, but I've never been the kind of person that needed such things. And I tend to only find out about certain things with award shows on social media, like Spoutable, um, the other place that I don't go to because I'm detoxing from it. So when I say that I seen some of the collective bigotry and fuckery and the outrage that came from it secondhand, I mean that because honestly speaking, despite being a writer, despite trying to break into entertainment myself with my work, I'm not doing this for awards and accolades. If people read and like our characters, that's the only award I want. I don't want to dress up. I don't want to be amongst the Hollywood elite. I don't give a fuck about stuff like that. Never have, never will. It's just not for me. But I know my attitude is few and far between it. I don't really think so because a lot of people my age and older just don't care for award shows anymore. It's just never been our cup of tea. But this award show, after last year's slap that everybody heard around the world, was more subdued from what I heard. But they had to have just a little pinch of drama. And what was the drama you said? The best supporting actress. There were a lot of good actresses that were up for the role, apparently. One of the actresses, as you can see here, that I'm highlighting is Angela Bassett. Now, those of you who know me, who know that I did both a podcast earlier, well, technically a vlog cast earlier about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, how it touched me, how the acting helped us have closure for the loss of Chadwick Boseman, how the movie just was what we all needed at the time because the last few years have been heavy. Like, I didn't just mourn Chadwick, I mourned Anne, I mourned Lynn, I mourned so many people that we lost the last few years. I'm gonna calm down. So, when I say that her role in that movie impacted me because it was so good, I don't say that lightly because I know, oh, it's just a Marvel movie, 10. Why should it matter to you? It matters because these people gave their all. They were saying goodbye to a dear friend, and you could feel it in the way they acted. A lot of those scenes felt real. So I know she sat there that night being nominated, feeling the energy, not just our ancestors, but all the work. Because this isn't the first time she was nominated for an Academy Award, but yet again, she lost out. It's the same story over and over for black actresses in Hollywood. They think every once in a while giving Hattie McDaniel and Halle Berry awards is enough. But we're constantly overlooked for our work in this field. That's another reason why, even though I love writing, even though I hope to break into entertainment one day, I'm not doing it for awards because I've watched them overlook brilliant actresses of color. But what troubled me about this week's nonsense was they were trying to pit another woman of color versus a black woman, and I'm shutting this shit down. First of all, congratulations to Michelle Yeoh. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is a brilliant movie. I think that culturally speaking, we need more movies like this. So I was not upset with the wins. I was proud of Kike taking back his heritage, standing up and showing that no, we're not doing this to be model minority. We're doing this because we're here. This is our country too. So I am a-okay with certain wins, but I agree with you, and welcome to the chat, Respect, that Angela Bassett was robbed. Black Panther Wakanda Forever wasn't just a comic book movie. I know some people love to dismiss Marvel movies as, it's just a comic book movie. It was literally our saying goodbye to Chadwick Boseman, and it was done so brilliantly. The whole storyline worked, and it was because those actors and actresses sold those roles completely. You felt their pain. You felt their determination. You felt their moving forward with us. And that is what hurt about this loss. And Angela Bassett didn't rage. She didn't make a bunch of faces. She just looked visibly disappointed. And of course, Twitter being the toxic, shitty site that it normally is, a white woman, because it always is a white woman. I don't care to remember her name. I'm trying to do a Twitter detox, so I'm not even going to show a screen cap of it. Decided to tweet her little stupid fingers out there that Angela Bassett should have showed more respect for Michelle Yeoh. She should have clapped. She should have applauded. She should have showed more. It was just racist dog whistling at this point. Trying to police how black women feel over being overlooked yet again and trying to pit us against our Asian sisters. And that's not going to fly, especially after the last few years. The last thing we need is some white woman stepping in the middle of something that she shouldn't have inserted herself in the first place. To tell a black woman who has worked her ass off in this film industry, who has been overlooked several times, how she should feel. And I'm with this young lady who wrote this Medium article, and I'll have links to it, that Angela Bassett had every right. She is allowed to be disappointed. She gave her all in that role. Without giving too many spoilers, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, please watch it. She really sacrificed so much to bring a mother's grief, a mother's pain, and a mother's sacrifice to a role that so many of us could feel on a deep level. I just got finished talking about Rasheem Carter, how his last phone call was to his mother. That connection between mother and child was so strongly driven in that story. And that is why the constant disrespect of our craft, of our abilities by these award shows, we're sick of it. They wanted to talk all year last year about Will Smith slapping Chris Rock after Chris Rock very verbally, globally disrespected his wife with his little freaking non-funny G.I. Jane joke, because Chris Rock can't get over his crush of Jada Pinkett Smith. Everybody wanted to catch the vapors about that. They wanted to get back to normal, boring award show. Now you have that now. But what I'm asking black directors, actors, and actresses to do is to just accept the fact that this is their playground. Stop looking for their acceptance. We don't need it. Black Panther, without the accolades of Hollywood, without their awards and Oscars and Emmys and bullshit, was a fine movie. I don't think it needs them. I'm going to watch that movie again because it resonated with me. I don't need a little golden statuette to tell me what to watch. I never did. And I think that is the problem with Hollywood in a nutshell. They have controlled so many people with their trinkets and their baubles and their accolades. And I think they are coming up against a not only younger generation that really doesn't care whether or not they get it. They're going to do them. And the older generation that is burnt out and jaded because we never see our representation being respected. We barely see movies that we want to actually watch up there. How many more old-timey country movies or old-timey European movies or old-timey periodic pieces about royal families that isn't even remotely realistic because they were all a bunch of incest motherfuckers? Do we have to sit through for Hollywood to get that we don't care anymore? So while I am upset that Angela Bassett was robbed of an award that's seemingly prestigious, I hope that she continues to carry herself because she is a brilliant actress and she deserves better than what Hollywood continuously gives her. She deserves the love and support of her community and beyond because she gives her all to every role she does. And I will not let some Twitter Karen reduce her visible dismay at losing, which is a natural reaction when you're sitting there dressed up, hoping that your work is finally being recognized and not to have it. She didn't come out against Michelle Yeoh. I guarantee you, if you asked Angela Bassett how she felt today about the amazing wins of Everything Everywhere All at Once, she would feel the same way I feel, that young Asian children can finally start seeing themselves positively represented, just like she has done for young Black girls. So, no, we are not going to allow people who want to stir the pot, who want to cause issues where there were none, who want to read into slight disappointment more than what that was, to stir issues where there is none. There is no hate between the Black and Asian communities. I refuse to allow that narrative to be driven forth by troublemakers. Some of you know that the only way to keep our communities divided is to find little things to try to nitpick and insert yourself in. You should have just minded your business. Angela Bassett is allowed to feel a little bit disappointed at hearing her name called as a nominee and then not receiving an award when she gave her all for a role. I'm sick and tired of people acting like we're not allowed to feel. We're not allowed to have emotions at all. We have to be gracious in the face of constant disrespect. We have to be gracious in the face of the loss. Black women are tired of constantly showing grace in response to disrespect. Some of you think, oh, well, Tim, we're not trying to be racist about it. We just think that an actress of her caliber should. What makes you think that it's your right to dictate how people should feel? If you're disappointed in something, the last thing you want is some outsider telling you, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. They're not you. You're not Angela. So how dare you? But it is that colonizer mentality, that plantation princess mentality that some white women channel for some reason, that make them feel just the need to insert themselves into things that they really don't deserve to be in, to cause issue that shouldn't have been done. There was absolutely no reason for her to try to tell Angela Bassett not to feel a certain way. And I just want it to be clear that I fully support everybody who won that night. I love that Brandon Fraser is finally getting accolades. Years people didn't take him seriously. He's just a pretty face actor. He doesn't have depth. And now everybody wants to come against him because he played in a fat suit for the whale. But he sold that character for so many of us who have struggled with weight issues and just isolation. But so many people want to just hyper focus on the superficial. And this is another reason why I just don't want to deal with award shows. Because honestly, they are just as stupid, vapid, and superficial as our society. And as somebody who has embraced my sociopathy, I just don't have any interest in it. I feel like it is just another distraction to keep us from chasing our dreams, to keep us from plugging away at things we want to do. And if you are going into any creative project with the idea of awards and accolades, you are not doing it right. And I think some people need to hear that. You need to be telling stories to tell your story. You need to be writing and making movies because you want to, not because you hope to smooth with big name elites, because that isn't the best that you will lose yourself in. Some of the people that made it, as we call it in our community, made it because they were determined to. People who went from sleeping in their cars like Tyler Perry to being a multi-billionaire because he didn't give up. He took beatings because, he just dresses up like a woman. What's his orientation? All that other stupid shit from our community and beyond. And you know what? He still does him. So if you are listening tonight and you want to get into the business, or you want to write, you want to direct, you want to movie make, but you're doing it for the sole purpose of one day standing on that stage holding that statuette, you're in it for the wrong reasons and you're going to be heartbroken. do your thing because you want to do your thing, because you have a vision for a story to tell, because you have the vision to make somebody else's story come to life. Do not do it for accolades. I know it's hard for some people to accept or understand because our society has conditioned us to believe, oh, the acceptance of your peers, awards, that shows you're getting somewhere. It leads to depression too. Because what happens to those youths who, I have a voice, I have an idea, but nobody's paying attention to it. So maybe I shouldn't write it. Maybe I shouldn't share or express myself at all because I'll never be award winning. And that's bullcrap. We have to stop allowing society to beat down every bit of creative energy. And it coincides with so much that went on this week. I know some of you know what happened with Silicon Valley. I know that people have their opinion about how the Biden Harris administration has handled things, but with everything that's going on, with all the coordinated chaos that has been going on, we need people to steer our country from not hitting an actual depression. I know it's all we can't bail people out, but we can bail out banks. It's real easy for people who don't understand finance to get angry. Initially speaking, I knew that they were going to have to do something like this so that we didn't have a financial fallout. Because that was what the Republicans were hoping for. They were hoping that this president would panic, not bail out Silicon Bank and SVB, and the windfall for that, and I don't mean windfall, that's an actual boon. The fallout of not helping these banks out would have severely crippled our financial markets and hurt so many people of lower income levels. This isn't just a rich person's problem. That's how our media is trying to frame it. That's how the GOP is trying to frame it, as they conveniently forget that 45's rollback of the restrictions on what banks can declare and how they're supposed to carry themselves within the realms of shares and stocks. People don't understand how finances work because they don't want to think about it. I just want to put money in the bank or have a 401k. I don't want to think about finances or how things are run. So when shit goes wrong, these are the loudest ones without understanding why this is needed. I've seen those memes of yelling, dressed up like the Joker because you want to vilify yet another woman in charge as well. And you need to stop this. Understand that there was no easy way to fix this, but fixing had to be done so that we did not hit another depression. I don't know if you understand what Great Depressions are like. My grandparents survived through one. We had a mini one in 88. Our country right now currently has just started to slowly emerge from the pandemic, and we are not even out of the woods with that yet. We cannot afford a financial collapse on top of that. That is why coming to the rescue of these banks, making sure that people get their paychecks was important. But the CEO of Silicon Valley definitely needs to be prosecuted because he was doing some shady shit. And why was he allowed to do shady shit? Because once again, and I need to remind people, 45 rolled back a lot of restrictions. Banks did not have to report certain things. Banks could cook certain assets. It's why this whole bullshit with both the banks, crypto scams, and so many things went on the last 4 years even, unchecked. And now everybody wants to blame Biden for this when it wasn't Biden's bag. It's yet again another mess our president has to clean up. And if you want actual competence to keep us stable, no matter how troublesome the times become, we have to keep focus because our media is going to try to frame this a certain way. Certain people on social media are going to want to be angry about this and other things. But the truth of the matter is, We are going to keep feeling the fallout of 45. That's why I call it the fallout of 45. The repeal of Dobbs wasn't just the repeal of the Dobbs Act for women's rights, which we're still feeling the effects of that, but the also repeal of certain federal restrictions on banks' declarations of both assets and holdings and stock trading. Because those restrictions were lessened under Trump, banks were running willy nilly. And sure, now that we have a competent presidency, it would be lovely to get stronger regulation, but we need a functioning Congress to work with our president to make sure that's in place. And then we still got to worry about the Supreme Court shooting certain things down because we set those checks and balances on purpose so that we wouldn't have a dictatorship. I know it feels messy, and to some of you, you've probably already checked out because it's complicated. I don't care about that. But you need to start caring because there are way too many people that can be hurt by these banks not doing what they're supposed to do. And now Meemaw's face is all over the place again. And it's like, Amelia's playing games. I don't have anything else to say about Elizabeth Warren unless she tries yet again for another failed campaign in 2024. I'm tired of seeing her face whenever they talk about big banks because, oh, she's a policy wonk. But I know they've been running her ass all over MSNBC. I've seen the clips on social media. It is not okay to run to Elizabeth, I make up my life, Warren, anytime big banks, as she likes to call them, is talked about. Because her solution is always heavy handed, unrealistic, and unfair to those of us who would be crushed by a fallout of finances. These people don't think about the people underneath them that don't have $1 million cushions to fall back on if this country goes into economic collapse. They don't think about those of us who are struggling every day just to keep a roof over our head, food in our kids' bellies, while the Federal Reserve is drained dry by people who stole PPE money and other luxuries that they did not deserve, but bulk at things like student debt reform and other things that can actually help our society not be crushed under the weight of debt. And all I've asked people to do is pay attention to who represents you, how they vote, and move forward with people who want things that help our communities and beyond, who want things for every American, not just Americans who look and act and think like us, because that is not the way of pragmatism. Do I want to accept hateful people? No. But I understand that I've got to share the earth with them because it really is a low hanging fruit for some people to be that way. And a stabilized society will benefit us all, whether I like you or not. And I would rather have a stabilized society, even for the people I don't like, versus this constant state of chaos. Another point I was going to bring up on Tuesday, which feeds into this bank near collapse, is the fact that people seem to think the president can just wave a magic wand and make stuff happen without understanding both checks and balances, without understanding that our part is to help him by having local and state representatives that want to work with him towards better. Right now, we are still allowing this ridiculous divide in our country. We have given our house up to a bunch of yahoos that are wasting our time, doing nothing, allowing great pretenders like George Santos to act like a representative of their party. They are not serious, and they are a detriment to actually getting stuff done. Could you imagine where we'd be if Hakeem Jeffries had allowed to be the Speaker of the House, if we had both the House and Congress right now? But instead, you would rather play games about, oh, Biden did something that's going to go against the environment. Biden's going after TikTok. Yeah, I seen that garbage. Everything I've done in the research of this is all my opinion. I'm stating it right now and right here because I am still getting a lot of he said, she said, but nothing directly, especially from the White House, has come across. But if you go on Spoutable or any of the other social media sites, and if you go by our supposed media, they're running with the whole idea that the president is gonna ban TikTok. Now I know President Biden's an older gentleman, and that social media for a lot of older folks. I personally have seen TikTok videos. I see compilations on YouTube and Twitch sometimes. Not for me. I've never signed up for TikTok. I don't see it happening. My partner, on the other hand, who's 6 years younger, I like to tease him sometimes and call him a millennial. He's on the cusp between Gen X and millennial. He has a TikTok. Barely on it, but when he is, he's on it for hours. It's a very addictive site from what I've seen with him. There are some people that are into TikTok, some people that aren't. I see a lot of Gen Xers like me that are just like, it's there. I'm not bothered by it, but I don't really need it. My attitude has always been, if it keeps people happy, if it's not harming people, which TikTok can't always say, some of them challenges have been very problematic. Looking at you, Milk Crate, Benadryl, TikTok licks and other stupid shit that kids were doing for their 15 minutes of fame. Not even 15 seconds, because it's now, I think the video format's like 2 minutes long, if that. Like any social media, there is good, bad, and in between on TikTok. But from everything that I've done in the digging, which is perusing sites, looking for anything official from the White House, President Biden has stressed to certain stockholders in TikTok that he would like them to sell said shares because it's a conflict of foreign interest. Those beings are in China. And right now, with all the back and forth that we have been having with China trying to be global brokers between Iran and Iraq and trying to prove that they can be world leaders, it is tenuous times. We're not sure if this is going to be Axis Powers 2.0, as some people have speculated. We don't know. And right now, we can't afford to be getting into a petty back and forth over stupid stuff. But if there is a clear financial interest and also interest of privacy, which is everything that I have been able to dig up, the whole issue comes from the Biden Harris administration worrying that our data, for those who enter themselves on TikTok, whether you make an account, whether you visit, are being harvested by people with nefarious purposes. It is on our leaders to look out for stuff like this. And it's funny because the Republicans want to act like their boy was a champion for it. Oh, Trump was going after TikTok anyway. Yeah, because they hurt his ego. It had absolutely nothing to do about protecting our data. And honestly speaking, with the way social media behaves, every single one of them, we put our own personal data at risk. We are allowing ourselves to be harvested constantly whenever we log online, but we have to be the ones to choose who gets that information because how they utilize it is important. It's why I gladly went over to Spoutable because I've dealt with Bot Sentinel for years now. I've watched Christopher Boozy build his site up to be fair, balanced, and show people how it's done. Is it a perfect system? No, because there's no such thing as that. But I do feel safer with my algorithms in his hand because I'm not being hammered by algorithms anymore. And I know that's not going to be forever. As the site gets bigger, as more people start actually tossing money his way, we might have the door open to that. I hope not, but that's down the road. Right now, I'm just enjoying the peace that Spoutable gives currently. But when I say this whole idea that President Biden's going after TikTok and oh, this is gonna make the youth mad and they don't vote anyway. Let's get something straight. I'm not saying this to just piss off the youth voters because some of them have turned out a bit more lately. It did take the repeal of Dobbs and us women losing our rights to choose in a lot of states, our medicine being fucked up for some of you to open your eyes. What the heck was that? Y'all right? Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. It's funny how everybody wants to tout the youth vote when they are still not churning out in a decent percentile. So yeah, while the president allegedly threatening to ban TikTok should maybe upset a few people, if you were planning to be politically active and one act is enough to shake that, you're not politically active. I don't play these kind of games because my survival depends on my vote. My constant stability depends on my vote. The fact that I live in a state where my governor, representative, and senator have worked together to not only protect LGBTQ rights, women's rights, and beyond. That is what each state should be striving for. But some of you don't have that yet. You want to talk smack about other people. You want to complain about this president who is doing his damnedest despite it all. Despite all of the entitlement he's constantly smacked up against. We have to be the ones to get our stuff together and do the right thing. Keep our focus. Because they're going to try to distract us with these little nothing stories. If Biden wanted to ban TikTok, which I highly doubt even was what he said, but even if he did, so what? There is always going to be something else. I feel like too many people want to act like something's the end of the world. But I guarantee you, when something along the lines of TikTok, but even shorter or more fancy and frilly or more catchy, that offer more chances to be famous come about, you will move on to that too, because we are fickle creatures, human beings. We always act like we're loyal to something until we aren't anymore. I look at Twitter. Musk has been really doing his part to tank that site, turning it into a toxic dump that you could pay him $8 to lose personal information to. It is a dumpster fire full of self-entitled, arrogant people who just want to argue with each other, and they can have it. And a lot of us moved on. We seen the writing on the wall. It's what happens after a while. Does it suck to lose a place that you've been? I was with Twitter for 10 plus years. I joined the beta in 2010. Fully started tweeting regularly from 2012 on. So when I say that it was a long time of logging in and interacting, and I cherish all the friends that I made, but yous all came with me anyway. Yous are with me here on Twitch, yous are with me on YouTube, yous are with me in Discord when I remember to sign on to that. And a lot of yous have moved on to Spoutable because that's the way it is. We, especially Gen Xers, know nothing's permanent. Nothing's meant to last forever. And when it sucks, why stick around? I wasn't gonna keep putting content on Twitter when I didn't respect that site. And honestly speaking, the shit that he's doing feels not even coordinated, just feels so inept. It feels like I'm watching Trump's presidency, but only in CEO form in a site that really didn't deserve it. Say what you want about Twitter, it brought a lot of us together when it did. We got to learn a little bit too much about some people, but it really was a place that a lot of us called our online home for a while. So it does sadden me sometimes, but I'm really getting over it because there's been way better alternatives. And that is just the reality of if this TikTok thing was a reality, which I really feel after digging that it's not. I feel like a lot of people don't seem to understand how decisions are made, and you just fly off the handle with your feelings. And exactly, respect. I know it's bad there, and I know that the only people around now are the people that are like willingly giving money so that they can have that little blue check mark that they couldn't earn beforehand. And I'll even be 100%. Back in the day, especially like around 2016, I put in for a check mark because after you hit like about 20,000, I believe you could apply for it. And then after I started seeing the hubris and arrogance of the blue checkmark squad, as I called them, the people who thought, oh, that blue checkmark makes me more important, it gives more weight. I was like, I don't want to sit with these people. I don't need it. I started realizing that that blue check mark was just like another award, a validation that I don't need. If people want to hear me, they're going to hear me anyway. If people don't want to hear me, that's their choice. I don't need a special marking. I'm going to do me whether I'm the only person listening. And I think when you have that energy, you will bring in the people that are meant to be around you. Yeah, it will take time. And I don't know about some of you. I don't care if I ever become super popular anywhere because that's exhausting to me. I don't have to keep up with a bunch of people. I'm sorry. I'm old, I'm slow, and I like this nice, smooth flow of everything in my life right now. So I don't need it to get big. I don't need to blow up. But I know that some people don't do that. I know some people do social media to feel important. And I'm telling you, just like chasing awards, that's another abyss. I'm not saying that you shouldn't want validation because it circles back to what I talked about earlier with the award show. But that validation should come from the fact that you feel confident using your voice. You feel confident that no matter what you're saying, you believe in it. And I think that a lot of people aren't really trained in feeling that way. We're taught, oh, don't say that. You might hurt somebody's feelings. You might not be liked. And when you get to a point in your life where you realize that I don't care who likes me, sometimes I have to say what's on my mind. It's not to just ruffle feathers. It's not to make people feel bad about themselves. It's because it has to be said. And I really feel like there are just too many people. Oh, exactly. That McLaughlin chick, along with I can't. Mensch. I kept blanking on her name because I couldn't stand her. That other OVA wonk lady as well. It's like a group of really wicked white women online that raise their platforms off of supposedly being anti-Trump, pushing their little white Karen politicians and trying to assert themselves into things, causing beefs between themselves and the alleged K Hive. You know, because they didn't even know who was K Hive or not. Anybody black to them was K Hive. And even those of us who raised our hands and said, hey, we consider ourselves proud members of K Hive, got told we were cult leaders and other bullshit. There was just a trifecta of terrible supposed women in journalism that just continuously try to cause this drama and beef. They've been trying to come out against Spoutable too. I seen VA Walk's bullshit. And like I said, there are screenshots, VA Wonk, of your backstabbing, your treachery, and not just from Christopher Boozy. So if I were you, I would focus on your journalism. But then again, that's not bringing in numbers, is it, honey? That's why you got to stir up social media drama so that your little Kiki squad will come out of pockets for you. You're not fooling anybody anymore. It is so ridiculous. I can imagine respect. They are out of pocket because a lot of us aren't on there anymore to really check that. We don't have the energy. And I tell black women all the time, it's not our job. If they want to take over Twitter with their ridiculousness, let them. Nobody's going to listen to their echo chamber, and it's just a squawking of stale ass birds at this point. I'd rather swim with my pod. We don't always have to get along. We don't always have to agree on stuff. But it has been so nice to have actual respectful discord, respectful back and forth. It opened my eyes that this is how social media should have been for years now, but it wasn't. And I can't go back to that toxic who are we fighting mentality. I don't want it. And I'm not going to knock anybody that has to have that because it was a daily thing. If you had told me even 6 years ago that I'd be jumping to another social media site, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here because I didn't want to be on Twitter at first in the first place anyway. And if it wasn't for my job over 10 years ago, back then when I was working for the magazine, saying I needed a social media presence, I wouldn't have had one. Honestly speaking, wasn't interested. But I've moved on. And while I will always cherish the memories I had on Twitter, it's going to be what it is. Oh, I'm telling you, my block and mute pile on Twitter was so full that I wondered if I was going to hit capacity. And then I had set it where I would not get DMs directly from anybody I didn't follow back because the amount of hate DMs that I used to get, especially back in the day, especially during the 2015 2016 election season, death threats, racial slurs, threats against my child, that shit took a toll on my mental health. All because I went after MAGAs and Bernie brats with a vigor. That is why my numbers grew because I didn't care at that point anymore. I said what I meant what I said, and I carried myself the way I carry myself in real life on social media, and it attracted people, but it also attracted a lot of negative attention. I had a stalker. That wasn't fun. I seen that news article about that lady who does podcasts like I do, who had a man just show up at her house and murder her and her husband. That shit is scary. And it wasn't 4 years ago that I had a dude that I didn't interact with. I tried to do it the right way with this guy. Did not engage him. I see him try to start. I muted him at first because it was like, I'm not going to outright block him because he's for some reason not directly engaging me after the first mute. He started with anybody who would respond to me. And I started telling him, just don't engage him. Then he found my YouTube, both channels. The one that I use when kiddo wants to view stuff, and my main CCC channel that I turned into the Kalari GXC channel. He found that, started leaving weird comments and pictures of himself. It was a really weird time. Then the threats started because I wouldn't respond to him. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to engage this guy. Maybe he'll back off from it. He didn't. He started threatening my one friend who's a politician, which I don't think people understand the amount of people that I know offline and what they do for a living. And my friends who are in law enforcement, which is a really big no-no. Like, I don't think people understand. I don't just hang out with gamers, even though I love my gamer friends and community. I have friends from every walk of life. So when you go threatening them, and then you go threatening me, talking about when I open the door, you're going to be standing there with a gun, I took that shit seriously. We found out, because I have friends who can get that information without openly doxing him. But let me tell you, within 5 minutes after they seen that threat, I had his address, where his wife worked, or ex-wife at the time. I don't remember all the details of it because it was such a scary time. Where you went to the gym, buddy. I made sure that we had all your information, and we went to personally, not me, because I didn't want him seeing me personally, but he knew where I lived in North Carolina at the time. This is how deep the threat was. So my friends went to visit him and make sure that his little threat wasn't acted upon. And like every psycho, when he's met against somebody who's like, okay, you fucked around, now you're gonna find out, he backed down. Because I'm old school New York. I know some of you will be like, well, Tim, what's that mean? I grew up around people that you either handled your business or you ran away. And we handle our business in my family. You want to make a threat, fine. But we're going to meet that threat back to you. And I was always taught that, all right, if you want to threaten me, bet. All I want to do is see you turn into a giant woman. Thank you. I was like, what's that music? Welcome to the chat, Raven Divine. Exactly. It was crazy that he even got to that level with that threat. But the fact that he was willing to take it there, I knew I had to get people involved in it that was gonna nip it in the bud. But I'm not saying that like I got sway or clout or any of that stuff. I'm saying that as an old school person who is like, if you are going to bring that level to me, I'm going to meet you with that level or beyond. Because that is how you handle people like that. And thank God it worked. I don't like feeling scared. And back then, I wasn't living with Axiom Wolf. It was just Kiddo and I in a state that I just got finished cutting off ties from people who around me were toxic. So I felt the most vulnerable I had in my entire life. And some psycho from Twitter decided that I was his target because he didn't like the stuff I was saying about Trump and other bullshit. It is scary the amount of people that take things to heart like that. And I want more people to be careful. I feel a bit safer now that my partner's here, now that I'm back up north, but it is not 100%. That story about that podcaster and her husband was a wake up call for me because doing what I do always runs with the risk of somebody feeling a certain way or thinking that I'm their enemy when I don't even know you. Like that young lady who wanted to argue with me on Twitter that I'm not a fat ally despite being a thick sister myself because I call Chris Christie wimpy. Ah, you're being fat phobic. And it's like, no, I'm calling somebody that I feel personally is a big fat asshole, and it's nothing personal. I feel like there are a lot of people who wear their insecurities way too heavily. And I get it. As somebody who struggles, I'm going through my weight loss regimen. I'm lifting again. I am doing what I can to get back into a state of mind where I am not worried about image issues. But I don't carry myself in that way. And I didn't mean to make her feel bad because I was mocking somebody that I clearly cannot stand for the way he carries himself as a representative. Yeah, it was a low blow, but come on now, it was easy. I just feel like too many people take the stuff that I say way to heart, and unless I am directing it directly at you, it ain't about you. I mock politicians from time to time. I call 23andMe Ma that because she literally made up her identity, stealing from women of color, stealing our heritage for those of us who literally have indigenous ties like myself. All so that she can get into an Ivy League school and thus keep us out of it. Because, oh, they hit their quota with Lizzie, even though she was just a white woman. And she knew she was just a white woman, but she could lie and get away with it. I make fun of Chris Christie because, yet again, he has done nothing good for New Jersey, causing all kinds of corruption and delays, and yet they keep electing him because the right people still benefit from his corruption. I say it all the time. I don't hit low all the time. There are plenty of politicians that I see get mocking names that not my lane, so I don't fuck around with that. Lindsey Graham, when I lived in South Carolina, got on my last nerves. I can make fun of the fact that the good old boy mentality don't work with him. Like when he was trying to hold the AR-15. You ain't fooling nobody with that, Lindsey. Come on now. But some of yous want to veer into his alleged sexuality, and I don't play those games because I don't believe in mocking somebody's sexual orientation. That's not a low-hanging insult that's worth it to me. And I know for some of you, well, how can you mock somebody's side? I'm a big girl. There is not many. When you live in a black family, you've dealt with the dozens. And if you have been a big girl all your life, you've heard some funny and not so funny jokes at your expense. I have thicker skin, I guess. I can handle a weight joke if it's funny. I can tell a person if it's not funny, you need to get better game. That is just the way I've always carried myself. That is the way I survive in this world that still needs superficial things. I feel like as we move forward into whatever future that comes, you all have to learn how to look yourself in the mirror, like what you see, in spite of the things that other people might not. Because that is the only way you're going to get away from, oh, it's fat phobia. Some people don't like big people. That's their problem. If you are comfortably colorly or comfortably plump, or if you're just happy being big, be that way. But it's a problem when you know you're insecure about your size, when you know that you aren't really comfortable, and those little inside voices that you're warring with because you're not comfortable are coming out because somebody made a comment about somebody that isn't even you, that just happens to be big, that it just has to stop. It's not fat phobic to use a fat insult towards somebody who's awful. I'm sorry. I just, that, you will never get me on board with that. And if somebody wants to insult me, especially if they don't say it to my face, I don't care. If they do say it to my face, I have carte blanche to clap back at them. That's the way it works. We all have to learn how to get better in our responses to people that want to try to bully us and rise above it. And the only way we're going to do that is to work on our own self image. I'm not lifting to get a perfect beach bod. I don't think I could ever handle that. The one time, as I've said before, and I'm going to get ready to wrap it up, but I've said it before, the one time that I ever got where I was, where you call it skinny. And I was skinny, skinny. I had lost a ton of weight. They had put me on this weird diet. And my aunt carries a picture of it because she said, "Oh, it's your happiest moment." And it wasn't, as I've said on other podcasts, it was the most miserable time for me. I don't see myself ever get into that size again because I feel powerless when I'm that small. So instead, I decided to weight lift. I decided to actually try to turn some of this fat into muscle. And that is my goal. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to stay a thick sister because I feel safer that way for many reasons. This is my life, my body, and my confidence. And I refuse to let anybody take that self worth from me. And I want more men and women, more non binary people too, because I ain't forgot about y'all, to understand and feel that way too. Confidence can't come from other people. People will tell you what they want for their own agendas, and that can make or break some of you. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and find things you like about yourself and work on that. Build your own self-worth, because can't nobody give you that. That's why it's called self-worth. And when you have that, you will find yourself less chafed by stuff that doesn't involve or even about you, because they, who cares what somebody insults you with? If you're not feeling their insult, it can't phase you. But I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. Thank you all so much for sitting in. I will definitely try to be back on Tuesday. The pain has finally lessened. Fibroids finally stopped kicking my butt. But I am grateful to all of you for sitting in on this cast. Thank you to Axiom Wolf for resubscribing. Thank you so much. Oh, welcome to the chat, Fluffy. I needed a break though, because like I said, I'm getting older and fibroids are no joke, and Tuesday was just pain central. So I am going to definitely rest this weekend, write this weekend, and hopefully see you all next week with another one of these. Thank you all so much for sitting in. I really appreciate you all. And honey, go ahead, fire it up. I love this song. All right, y'all. See you next week. You have a great weekend. Love y'all.